Only knew. If people only knew.
They do know now.
Yeah, they do. So.
All right. Yeah. So, man, I get nervous before we start every one of these calls.
Why?
Because I feel like I'm on the here. Move a little closer so that.
No, I don't want to get any closer to you.
I know. All right. There's so much on the line.
Of course there is. That's what makes it good.
It's
Otherwise,
like,
nobody wants to see nobody goes to a movie, okay, to watch is Mary gonna get the laundry in the washing machine? I don't know. Let's find out. It's like
I wish my failure could be kept in a dark, place where no one could see it. So that would be much better. Yeah. So, all right. So I haven't had a lucid dream since the last coaching call that we did. But
2 weeks ago?
Well, yeah, 2 weeks ago. Okay. So, it was a little less than 2 weeks ago when we actually filmed it.
Right.
So it's been more like 10, 11 days, something like that.
Shocking.
You don't think that that's a horrible disappointment?
I don't. But keep going.
All right. So
bring it on.
Well, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I want to nail it. I want to start getting in once a week. So, I mean, I feel like, I feel like with all of the exercises that we're doing, I guess my expectations are like a little bit higher for myself with the amount of effort between reality checks and doing the wake back to bed technique. I mean, I was because I knew that this was coming up. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do
pressure's on.
I'm doing the wake back to bed technique
every day.
Yeah,
there you go.
Whatever. And and because of that, I noticed that up until last night, because I was really hoping that I would be able to get into a lucid dream before we did the call, because I wanted to be able to say whatever. So, but I did notice that every night that I got up to do the wake back to bed technique, I got progressively weaker in my it felt like my will kept getting weaker, my sense of motivation and definiteness of I'm doing this to get out into the lucid dreaming state tonight, and I'm gonna do this meditation, and then or whatever exercise, which for me, I was doing the lucid dream meditation usually when I wake up, and go back to bed, because that was the one that I had the most success with. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep
down on that.
Exactly. Right. But yeah, I really noticed that my sense of clarity and definiteness in doing it kept waning as I was just trying to go after it harder and harder.
Yeah, I think that part of it is just I keep hating to beat a dead horse, but it comes back to a few basic principles, right? It's it really is all about balance, right? And not just, I mean, I applaud your efforts, but then I'm going to smack you in the head for for losing your focus on why you're doing it. So instead of your goal, your personal goal, it's you shifted focus to I really want to get a lucid dream before I have to do this call. And so it's a very short-term goal rather than a far-reaching goal, So, and that balance between, pushing yourself and, making pushing myself, having not having the success that I was looking for, and then keep doing the same thing. Well, yeah, there is some part of repetition. So there's one part, but then there's, we also have to, that repetition becomes certainty in a way, right? Because it's if you have, a pattern that's repeating over and over again, and you're getting up at this time, and then you're doing this procedure and it's not panning out, and then you get up this time, you do this procedure, it's not panning out. And I'm not saying you have to jump, from one thing to the next all the time. I mean, that's just as bad, but there's got to be a balance there. So anytime something's not producing, I'm switching something slightly. I don't use the same technique every time I go to do something. It's I have my favorites until they're just so solidly set in, this is my procedure, and it's almost by the time I start my procedure, I'm already in. It becomes that cascade, that pathway opens wider and wider the more you build it. But right now you're just trying to, if you can applaud you for getting up and being consistent and doing all those things and going through the motions. But, the idea is that if you feel that you're getting weaker from that, then it's time to switch it up before you get to that stage. Hopefully you sense it ahead of time and you say, okay, I'm going to try a different technique. There are lots that we haven't even gone over yet, right? That's the thing. So it's like, get used to, as far as the will goes, I would say, get used to doing what you set out to do, even badly, right? Because it's like, that's the way to really establish the will. So like, even though we didn't give a different will technique or thing to continue it, people should be picking that up on their own and doing it, right? Like, so, and again, the thing with training the will is to never put it on something that there's some kind of moral value to, right? Because that way you're not compounding the detriment if you don't get it, right? Like, I'm not worthy, I'm such a shit, I can't do this. And you don't want to go there. It's a non-judgmental thing. So it should be something that doesn't matter, like the standing on the chair or striking the pose or whatever it is. One of the ones that I still do it to this day is like, putting my shoes in a specific way near the bed so, that before I can go to sleep. And there have been plenty of times where that's happened, where I'm just like, oh, I'm dying, just got to get to sleep, kick off my shoes, whatever, and get in bed. And then it's like, no sleep comes. And that's not me. I'm usually out in 2 minutes. And so, then I'm like, oh, shoes, put the shoes, put it there, boom, out. Right. So it's like training the will until it gets to be, kind of your closest advisor, so it's like doing the little things like that and switching it up. It's as valid, probably more valid overall in your overall practice, that lucid dreaming is a part of, right? But it's in your overall practice, building the will is almost, of paramount importance compared to everything else, right? Because it's that personal assistant that won't let you, go astray. Like, I'm not letting you break me. You've laid down to sleep, and even though you're exhausted, I'm going to be that thing in the back of your mind keeping you awake until you realize, like, oh, you forgot to do this step that you said you were going to do. So follow through with that.
Because I noticed that what happened as well was like, and this was typical for me at all of the times that I've pursued lucid dreaming, is doing the induction process when I'm laying down to go to sleep, and in this case, like mnemonic induction, like I'll have a lucid dream, or next time I'm dreaming, I'll recognize that I'm dreaming, and kind of trying to continue to bring my mind to that, but without enough body relaxation, right?
Yeah.
And so, and in that state of not really relaxing, and as I'm going through that mnemonic process, I noticed that another part of me comes in and is like, well, part of lucid dreaming is you got to get to sleep. And you really need sleep too, because you've been doing this night after night.
Right.
So it's like, then there's this like little battle happening between like wanting to become, wanting to stay lucid or stay awake and aware and go through the process. But then, the other part that's like, you got to get to sleep, you got to get to sleep, you got to get to sleep. And, by trying to do this thing and stay focused on the induction technique, you're just, like you're keeping yourself awake. And, so then it's like, there's almost like a drive for unconsciousness as much as there is a drive for consciousness.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is like, again, knowing that about yourself and knowing, here's the good parts. I'm able to, set up a plan and stick to it, even forget about the results. I'm there. And that's a big deal, right? A lot of people can't do that. And so, that's a positive part. The other part is I would switch it up as much to, like, let's say you're going to do the pattern interrupt of wake back to bed, to kind of do a formal induction, let's call it, right? As opposed to waking up in bed and sort of rolling over and going back to a normal, and like a straight up induction straight from that sleepy state, right, where you're kind of getting into that hypnagogic state, and relaxing within that and sort of getting that, and then moving into giving yourself the situational part of the dream that will sort of open up for you, and that will cause that to trigger you to be lucid, right? Like something within that, the dream that you've probably practiced for the lucid dream meditation, right? So balancing those two out, you're never going to feel like it's an imposition. It's like a overwhelming, like, oh, I've done it 5 days in a row, I've done it 7 days in a row, and it just keeps coming to nothing. It's like, I wouldn't let it go that long. I would do 2 days or 3 days if you have the opportunity to do that, right? And then it's like I go back to, like then this night, well, I'm going to just do the regular sleep, and wake up at a certain time, and then go back to sleep, and let that progress, right? And just try to do the normal induction. So you're constantly kind of, it seems like you're spreading things out, right, a bit, but they will have more impact over time, right? Instead of just trying to build this straight, pathway from, sleep, get up, stay awake for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, and then go back to sleep and induce the lucid dream state. That's like a very, it's a practical one, but it's a very narrow look at things, where we want to have a number of techniques, because each one will sort of blend together and will give you a stronger base for other situations that come up. Because what'll happen, like right now we're doing it on kind of an optimum range, right, where it's like nothing really implicit going on. You need sleep, everybody needs sleep, so there's the thing, but there's not like undue trauma or stress in your life right now that is like overwhelmingly like, oh, holy crap, where you would want to use this to help in that way, in some way, with the situation, but you can't get to sleep. You're too anxiety ridden, you're too this, you're too that. It's like, for me, it was always more like a boot camp training, where it was, okay, it's not just the norm. It's like you're under duress. Anybody can do it when it's just the norm. How do you do it when you're really under attack, from yourself, probably just the mental anxiety of whatever you're going through at the time, when you really need it the most. Right. So you sort of have to find, developing all these different types of inductions and skills to try to, find a natural flow for yourself. I mean, that's important, because it'll give you a much broader base, and that way you're not just dependent on that one territory that, if that gets snipped, one you don't get in.
That one process.
Yeah. It's like you need these other things to sort of balance it out again, so that you're not just relying on this one thing, and you just keep pounding this thing, and it's not working, and it's not working, and it's not working. You got to switch it up before it gets to that stage, so you can establish the pattern that you want. You want to be able to wake up, do your 20-minute meditation or whatever it is that you do for your little pause, and then you're going to jump right back into REM and be able to make a nice smooth induction and right into the lucid dream from there. So it just depends, can you establish that pattern where that's, more often than not, that's definitely what's going to happen. So, and sometimes you might need to put these other ones in if it's not quite going there yet.
So people should feel that, like, when we're as we're progressing through the course at this accelerated rate and presenting all these different techniques, it's not like
you got to keep up with this.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's good to know, because it's like, for me, I'm like, okay, well, this is the way Brian does it. He gets up in the middle of the night and does his thing, and then so he's got his wake back to bed technique.
Yeah, but I mean,
I've got to establish mine. But you're saying that, like, you use different techniques, and if you're hitting a point of stagnation or like too
and certain techniques for me, sort of facilitate the way I respond to the lucid dream when I get there. Like if I'm working for somebody else, I have one technique that I use primarily. If I'm working for myself, doing some of my own personal work, I have a different technique that I use for that. If it's just spontaneously happening, it's a different technique that's bringing me to that.
What do you mean by technique?
The induction technique. It's like, I mean, they're all based pretty much on the same thing. It's just that I've established like, 3 primary ways to do it that work for me consistently, but I've also sort of isolated them to doing purposes. Yeah, so working for somebody else,
which is
working for myself, or just spontaneous, lucid dreams that they just happen. I'm trying to sleep, so they just come in. So that's a different technique, So for me, anyway. So it's just you get used to it. Sort of like it's like you get your workout clothes on. Your body, almost like in getting the workout clothes on, your body's already prepping to work out. Like your mind's already going in that direction. You've established that pattern. It's like you might have a pair of sneakers that you only use to work out in, right? And you keep them clean in there. And when you put, just the feeling of those that are different than other sneakers that you have, maybe even the same brand, right? You put your feet in those, they feel different, and your body's already like associating that with working out. And so all these little things, these little rituals that we use to, habitually pattern ourselves for the end result that works.
So we don't want to create a pattern of failure with a technique, basically.
Exactly.
Right? So you're saying that, like, if we get success with a technique, and then we try it again and we don't, and then we try it again and we don't,
switch it up.
Then switch it up and just try something else and come back to it later.
Yeah, exactly.
And because because my thing was like almost like choking it,
Yeah.
Yes, I got something that works. Hammer the shit out of it.
Right. And the other thing too is that there are these more breakthrough, well, let's say techniques to make yourself, almost like a cathartic way of pushing yourself into a place where there's more chance that you're going to have a lucid dream, right? Or that you're going to be at that cusp.
Yeah.
Like waking up every hour.
Right. Waking up like every night.
When I was doing that, I wouldn't even I didn't even sleep in bed. I'd like blew up an air mattress and went to a different part of the house so I wouldn't disturb anybody, and just because who wants to hear the alarm? I mean, even if it's not for you, nobody wants to hear their alarm go off like every hour.
Can we do that technique?
It's just so horrible.
Yeah.
But it's like
we're gonna talk about that. Well, I mean, not now, but but I mean,
because if you've done, anybody that has kids knows, right? It's like if they're sick or whatever, or they're not feeling well at night, they may be up every. So you're probably just falling back asleep, and all of a sudden you hear the cry or you hear whatever, or the call, and you get up, you're flying out of bed, but you're like so disoriented because you keep being denied that REM sleep, right? You're just sort of getting in the zone, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get pulled back, and you're on high alert, right? Because it's your child too. So it's sort of like that idea, So each time your body's trying to jumpstart you into the REM state really quickly, because it's like, oh God, you're just not getting there. And that can be pretty traumatic for your mind anyway. It wants to get you there so badly. So doing that and getting almost like over fatigued. There's like these common scenarios that I know that I mentioned them before, but it's worth repeating. I mean, not that you want to induce this stuff, but we can sort of induce an artificial version, right? So like one of the easiest times it is to get into a lucid dream is when you're not feeling well, when you're sick, right? Because you don't have the energy to like do whatever, right? I mean, and if let's say you're not feeling well, but you're not in so much pain that you can't think, right? But your body is fatigued because it's trying to fight off things, right? So it's already wants to go to a relaxed state where you can just zone out, right? But that's a perfect time to sort of, if you can stay mentally awake, to transition into that very easily. Another time is when you're way overtired. So hence the hour on, hour off. But whatever,
I started to feel overtired, but it was a different overtired. But it was combined with kind of like the fact that I was overtired because of trying and not
we're talking overtired in a condensed time period, right? Not and induced, right? So like I know for myself, like anytime I've done an all-nighter, up working whatever, or having to do some type of work, and then you sort of get that second wind, but there's that funny feeling you have, like you're tired but you're awake.
Right.
You're aware, but there's that hyper awareness of, you might have even had a cup of coffee or whatever, but it's just sort of like you're just sort of sliding into that second wind of getting through your day. At that moment, or just before that moment, if you lie down to go to sleep, you're gonna take a deep dive into REM very quickly. And so, that's one of those opportunities that, if that's the case, you can really take advantage of it. Or, maybe you only got 3 or 4 hours sleep the night before, and then you're up for whatever, long trip,
But
whatever it
again,
is.
not doing that
No.
nights on
Oh,
end
no,
or
no,
whatever.
no. That'll
Yeah.
kill you.
Right.
That's just crazy. We know that we need good rest in order to do this well. Mm-hmm. We're never sacrificing that. I mean, little opportunistic things just to kind of get
Yeah.
you in the zone, to boost you up more than anything else. But you don't want to rely on those. I mean,
Right.
nobody would rely on those really, because they're just, they're not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a way to sort of jumpstart yourself into that place.
But the more techniques that we have as we go through the program, then the more different ways that we'll have to mix things up, basically.
Right. And, the other thing is that every time, any little success that you have, you're compounding the interest on that, right? By repeating, bringing it up over and over again, doing your meditations with that, bringing it up through the day, really remembering those, trying to remember the detail of it, and then fill it in, right? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? All of those things, right? So that you can, you're adding more energetic oomph to that little segment, even if it was only for a few seconds.
Even just thinking about that helps to
It's putting more and more attention on it, right? And when what we put our awareness on accumulates, mass.
right, and those
So-
neural pathways get established.
That's
more,
right.
Even just thinking about a experience that we had.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question, which is like, when I do have a lucid dream at this point so far, right? It's like I'll become lucid.
Yep.
And it's almost always at this point, I'm already in the dream, so it's a dream initiated lucid dream.
Sure.
And I'm realizing that I'm dreaming while I'm in there. Things are very fuzzy. They're like, it's not that they're not just out of focus, but it's like I feel almost like a weight in my consciousness, in my awareness, that like it's almost like I'm there, but I feel like tired when I'm there. Like I can't, almost like I'm pressing against a membrane that's like kind of like like I can't
Right.
like bring myself fully into the dream to really
Sure.
appreciate that it's as real as the way that you're talking about. So
Right.
no, so I know that you always say like, all you need is that like one experience of, but I still feel like even with the lucid dreams that I've had at this point, I don't feel like I've had an experience that gives me that real sense of like, oh my God, it's so real. And I'm so motivated now because it still feels like there's a darkness or a dullness to the quality of
Right.
being there.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, there are lots of techniques again to try to clear this up. But some people will say, I think generally most people would say the way that you would do that would be to focus your attention on something smaller. Don't like just take in the whole scene, but pick a point and focus on that. And through that focus, it tends to clarify everything else. That idea of a membrane is a very common theme for a lot of people when they first start doing lucid dreams, is that, they're sort of in this membrane that, kind of is obscuring, the clarity that is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual. And I think, again, it's like in some way it's a metaphor in your mind, that, there's dreams and then there's lucid dreams, and there's still a film between those things. So it's almost like you have to break that. It's kind of like one person put it to me. It was like that point in The Wizard of Oz where it turns from black and white to color.
Yeah.
It's like the first Technicolor film, right? Where it was like she opens the door from the black and white inside of the house to boom, and that's kind of that stuck with me because that was like, that's a great analogy, and a great visual too. So, so I think, one of the things that focusing on something, like if you can pick a certain thing out and really like laser like focus, really looking at the details, the smaller details of that thing, will help to clear that fog to some degree. My way, because that doesn't always work for every person. I mean, and it can work sometimes and then other times not. So for me, I found that there was a cartoon that my kids liked a long time ago, a really long time ago. And some people will remember this or whatever. It was like a Dragon Ball Z. You probably remember that, right? No, you don't remember that?
I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I've never seen it.
I'm old. So, all right. So anyway, it was a cartoon-based thing, right? And but these little martial arts guys that were sort of almost like demigods in some ways. They would bring up their power or whatever, and then they would sort of like, it would burst out from them almost like a little tiny nuclear explosion, in all directions, and devastate their enemies, and they'd turn into super, fighters and all this stuff, right? So it was like that, and my boys loved that stuff, right? So, so I thought one time, when I was in a lucid dream, I was like, okay, I don't think I actually used the words that they say. I can't even remember what they are now, or, but it was sort of like, oh, well, the visual for me, the imagery for me was striking. So made an impression, obviously, because I still remember it to this day. So I said, oh, well, let me see how I can, rig this to my advantage. So for me, it wasn't so much a membrane as a fog, like a grayish fog that was around. It was light, but it was more like a fog, right? And so I could sort of see figures through it, but still, was obscured. So in my mind, I just sort of conjured up the word clear, and I said it out loud. And when I said it out loud, I stomped my right foot, and it was like this little nuclear ring went out from me in all directions and just sort of swept the fog and everything away, and the scene before me was clear. And so it was just, that's a way that I've sort of taken care of that, obscuring your view and your situation. So it's a technique that I use regularly if things seem to get jumbled, or something like that. If things start to, flip or change or whatever, or become obscured, then it's like I use something like that, or that specific one, to sort of settle things down or clear things and make your view much more clear than it would be normally. So
cool.
Give it a try.
Yeah, that's interesting. It also makes me think of how with the techniques that you utilize within a lucid dream, it's not like there's just one way to achieve a certain goal in the dream, but that there's a lot of room for flexibility and creativity in terms of how, like you said, you just made that up.
Yeah.
It's just a way for you to like vocalize with physical motion, like this mini ritual.
Yeah.
That
as long as you understand what you're doing, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like the laws are different there than they are here. So, but even here, I mean, we see people all the time. We applaud people that find, innovative new ways of doing the same thing, right, and making it better or making it more efficient or more effective, right? So I don't think that there's much difference between that and lucid dreaming or maneuvering through that territory. But you have to have the ideas. I mean, for me, I get a lot of ideas from, novels and those types of things. Not just this genre, but all the stuff that I read. But it's like, because I feel like it's the thing that I think about novels, where some of my colleagues, not a lot of them, but some of them, they don't share my opinion on this, right? They think that novels are, if it's not a textbook, it's a waste of time. They don't have the time for novels. And so, but everything that I do is so based in story that it's like they speak to me. And I agree from somebody that I admire that novels are distilled truth. That it's, they take these things and they put them in a framework that sort of highlights them, and you see to the essence of it through these characters or whatever it is, or the situations, right? So I do read a lot of those, and I it's my entertainment for one thing, and I always feel like I'm picking up something from it. Those are the best series that I go back to, or the best writers that I go back to, because I feel like there's little aspects of it here and there that I can pull and use for whatever work that I'm doing at the time. So it just makes sense to me, and that's just one of those silly examples of how that worked for me, and how it worked out really in the end. It was a nice simple technique rather than focusing on text in a book that you might have in your hand, or whatever it is that may or may not work for you.
Right.
Again, you have to be able to conceive it in your mind first, and then find some way to express that in the dream so that you can bring it into being. So, but that's all it is.
Cool. So the other thing was, we got an email from one of our members, and they were asking about the balance between lucid dreaming and goals that they have for their life or their practice, and trying to find the balance between those two things. And that was always an issue for me when I have made other attempts at lucid dreaming. It was always like, these other things seemed so important at the time, whether it was a financial thing or a relationship thing or whatever it was. And then there was lucid dreaming, and it was like, okay, or maybe a spiritual goal or whatever.
Sure.
And so lucid dreaming always seemed like something else, and so I even when you suggested like, oh, you're gonna go after this this other goal that you have that's obviously very important, you're gonna do it through the process of lucid dreaming. And I think that that's one of those things that we haven't really fleshed out that much, and we'll probably do a lot more of, but maybe you could just touch on that idea that how you go about that in a way, because I've found too, like even when I'm doing these practices, like I said, like as my attempts would fail, it was like my will started to feel weaker, and then it was like, and then you start to get this thing, it's like, where's my motivation coming from with this? Like, how am I going to keep myself in the game of,
right,
this is why I'm doing this is why it's important, this is why it's valuable.
Yeah, it's probably not so much that I would speak to the how, it's more that I would speak to the why of it. In my opinion, again, I think that lucid dreaming, first of all, is far underrated in, let's say, the Western esoteric community, if you will, in mass, right? So it's one of those things that we let fall away, and just it got relegated to sort of science, new age, whatever they're trying to figure it out, to psychology, those types of things. So but still kind of on the fringe. So people do it, but it's they're interpreting their dreams, they're doing other things, they're doing good work for sure, but it's still not as popular as I think it should be, because it's one of those techniques that I think, for what you put into it, I mean, the least amount that you're going to get is tenfold. So it's already in return from what you're doing.
What kind of return?
Depends what your goal is, right? I mean, it's like always moving toward that goal. But here's the thing, right? It's like any other technique. Like, let's say it's something we've done already, aura seeing. It's like, yeah, you can do that. It can boost up your your own way of dealing with things and how you deal with energy work, right? Because you can see it. So it's like, okay, I get a better feel for what's going on there. If I want to spend the time, but we know that takes way more time, from my standpoint, it's like the people that can benefit most from that technique are people that are in the healing industry, one way or another. I mean, obviously there's other things that could be done there, but I feel like they're one of the key, components. That's a technique that really goes a long way in that industry. Um, so, but you're going to spend a long time working on it and figuring it out. I mean, obviously it's going to vary from person to person, but it does take some time to really get that proficient at it, right? It's maybe it takes 3, 4, 5 months just to be able to get a glimpse or see that you can regularly get to a certain level, but to actually deepen that and be able to be very consistent and very detailed about it, and then again to figure out what it all means and how you're going to respond to it and what that's going to entail. I mean, that you're talking, years of training really to do that. And so, it has, what I think of as, there's a quite a payoff at the end, if you're in that industry. But there's a lot of stuff that you have to do and a lot more detailed than lucid dreaming, to be honest with you. There's just a lot of techniques that are involved and a lot of meditational things and time that has to be spent. I mean, you can't, you have to have waking hours to do it as well. You're not sleeping and doing it, so there's all these things that sort of make it, in my opinion, not as, it doesn't have as much return on your investment as lucid dreaming does. And lucid dreaming, almost every other technique that I can think of from a energetic standpoint, meditational, psychological, everything that I could possibly think of, whether you're trying to get rid of PTSD, whether you're trying to become a more proficient healer, whether you're trying to move forward with your relationships or, get a relationship or whatever, all of those things and much, much more, like everything under the sun.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like for each person, I know that those are like the broad categories, like whether it's success or it's like the seeing energy, this spiritual goal, or whatever. It's like I feel like there's always a place where somebody can insert like, well, my thing's unique, like my thing's different, like, and it seems like it's not related to lucid dreaming, or it's like, how do we form that bridge where we understand, like, it's like how is this ability going to translate into these other things in a real way?
I mean, can you think of something really obscure that somebody would be thinking about how, it wouldn't be effective for the lucid dreaming? Has nothing to do with that, or, I mean, anything at all. Can you imagine?
I mean, I've talked to you too much to try to think of something that would, because
what would be the, what would be, I'm trying to think of things where it's like, if I had to think of a scenario where I'm trying to think something that would be, that wouldn't seem like it would be related at all. That for me is, in this context where it's like, okay, what's something that lucid dreaming would have no effect on, or really wouldn't be worth my time. And, it's not worth your time because you don't understand how it could actually help you with whatever it is that you're dealing with. And so I think that's sort of that key idea. But imagine, that you could go to a place, let's say instead of a therapist, you go to a therapy room, right? Where it's sort of like the holodeck, right, on the Star Trek or, whatever. And so, where it's the perfect scenario, like something almost AI-like would sort of analyze you when you go in, and all of a sudden it knows what you know, and can give you scenarios when you step in and you say, I want to work on this. And it all of a sudden it pulls up scenarios for you that will sort of run you through your paces, whether they're literal or whether they're, metaphorical, right? Some kind of story form that it can run you through all these things so that you can start to identify the pattern that, you're involved with, and realize the principles that you need to get through that in a successful way. Or maybe it's just acclimating to, hard conversation that you need to have with somebody. And, it's going to be, doesn't mean it's going to be less impactful or less hard. It just means that, if you have that conversation in all its multiple forms that it could possibly have 100 times, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for you to, have it here if you've rehearsed it that many times and you sort of know all of these, or not all of them because there are a million parameters, right? But let's say the ones that are probably most likely going to happen. So it prepares you in that way. It's again, I feel like if people know the right thing to do or how to approach it or how to maneuver within your subconscious, it will far surpass any other kind of therapy that you could think of, because it's first of all, it's only you dealing with you, right? And so it's a place where you can run those scenarios over and over and over again and really acclimate yourself to them and take the sting out of them. And it's not an acceptance of them, it's more like you're able to go through it and process it in a way that you weren't able to before.
So so there's one so tell me if I'm right about this, but it sounds like to me that when you go into the lucid dream and you have an intention for being there, something that, like, your example was good. Mm-hmm. So I want to practice having this difficult conversation that I know that I'm going to have if I want to move forward, or if I want to change things in the way that I want to change them. And so I want to practice and get ready for that, and know that I'm going to handle it with confidence and grace and produce what I want out of that situation. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like, I think in a lot of ways, one of the things that I can imagine, would be great, right? If you could go into a lucid dream and summon an advisor that would be like, that would have all the answers for you, right? That would be like, this is how you, this is what you say with this, like, tell me what I need to say to make this happen perfectly. And they could just come and be like, okay, here's the script, and you could like write it down when you wake up in the morning. And it's like, okay, we're going into our subconscious, and our subconscious is connected to infinite intelligence, and so can we access that wisdom? Right. But it sounds like when you go in, it's more like you go in to acquire that wisdom, but the wisdom isn't going to come as just
it's not a script.
It's not a script. It's kind of like, okay, well, here, let's practice that. I'm going to provide you the opportunity to work on and navigate the experience that will then give you the wisdom through experience, mm-hmm. that you then can take into the real world.
Yeah, because, if you just had a script, although it sounds like it would be a great thing for people, think about it in real life. People get advice all the time when they ask their friends, like, what would you do? Yeah. And they say, this is what you go in and this is what you say. How many times I've had people tell me that, and when I've asked them for advice about things, and do you know how many times I've actually followed through and said the right words at that time in that scenario? Once out of maybe 100 times that people said, this is what you do. You go in and you say this. Even from the same person that I took the advice that I actually went and used it.
So you're saying you tried it that way once?
I tried. Well, I tried it that. I tried to go in thinking. I left the conversation with the friend thinking, "Oh, okay, I'll just do that." By the time I got to the situation, it was like, "Oh, Jesus, what do I do?" Like you don't remember it. A script is just a single line, right? It's like there's no variance because you don't really know what you're doing.
Or an answer is just like
that may never come up, right? And so the scenario that one line might, be used with may never actually come up.
Because reality is always coming into being out of, like, it's spontaneously
created, right?
So,
yeah. So it's like, that's the idea. So you want to learn the principles of what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? And how to approach it in all sort of myriad ways, right? So that you can be flexible. So if you really know the information, you can walk into a situation and handle it, right? There's no like that anxiety's gone. If somebody breaks down in front of you, you deal with it. If somebody is mad, you deal with it. If somebody is, overjoyed at it, you might be surprised, but you deal with it, right? So it's like all of those scenarios come from the wisdom of understanding of, what's the principle here? What am I supposed to do? How do I apply it in a flexible and proficient way? And so that takes repetition, that takes training and teaching, So lucid dreaming is there's nothing better than that.
Because it seems like, I think part of the thing is that I gather is that part of the way that you see the world, and maybe this is, I know it's from many aspects of your training, including lucid dreaming and including medicine and martial arts and meditation, all these things, maybe seeing as well, seeing energy. But, I feel like from a Western standpoint, we think about the world oftentimes as static, right? As fixed, right? Yep. So we're, even science kind of initially when we're young trains us to think about the world in that way. But I feel like you see everything as being much more fluid. It's like you're not thinking about like things like what it's like your frame around reality is not, this is the way that things are. It's almost like the world is a fluid thing that is, kind of constantly fluxing and changing and moving and emerging out of potential into being. And it's like, it's more like like you feel more like a surfer than someone that's walking on land, And so I feel like it's just an interesting way of viewing the world. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, because lucid dreaming is such a fluid environment, right, that's changing so spontaneously with your mind, and you can run through these scenarios or whatever, it's like, do you feel like that contributes to this idea of like seeing the principles behind what's happening all the time, and how do I respond to this person, and they're coming at me with this type of energy, or I can tell that they're like, having a hard time with something, or they're struggling, they're not hearing me correctly, or
right.
Whatever. It's like it's a constant dance or something.
Well, it's a couple of different things, right? It's like, first of all, a lot of people have, over the last 30, 40 years, right? From the 60s on, have taken philosophy courses in college and whatever, and some of them have made their, fortunes and, regurgitating philosophy from the past, and and also training people, modern people now in these things. But when you learn a philosophy, one of the things that sort of comes out to you is that there are all these principles that you're sort of basing this philosophy on, right? The ways to navigate life, right? But the odd part is that no matter how well you know the material, those types of things that may come up in life where you would apply that principle may never happen, or it may happen once, and that's not enough to really get a feel for applying a certain thing and seeing how the end result pans out, better or worse, right? So, lucid dreaming is one of those places where you can put that to the test over and over and over again. It's sort of like anything that you would try to work out, like martial arts training, or any of these things where you go into the studio every day and you practice this and you practice this and you practice this, and 1,000 times later you're really getting it down, and 10,000 times later you really you've mastered it, and how it integrates with everything else that you do, right? So it's one of those things where, again, I like your analogy of the world being a fluid sort of scenario, and I believe that that's the truth. I'm just as I do believe that the couch is the couch at this point, and it's solid and all of that, but I also know that on a molecular level it's moving and vibrating, and it's not really static. And but I feel like what I've come up to over the years is that lucid dreaming for me is the perfect instruction in swimming the fluid atmosphere of the world that we live in, so it's like there's nothing better that I've found so far. I'm not saying that there isn't something better. I haven't found it yet. So right now, compared to everything else that I've done, I believe that lucid dreaming has the best ROI for most people.
And so you mentioned something else where you were talking about the philosophy that you may learn. And so we're all brought up with a philosophy, whether we, know or not, right? So it's like you maybe
piecemeal it together over the years.
Right. You have your own synthesis of like a philosophical understanding of the world,
right?
Your
How the world works,
how it works,
places, right?
All that, right? So, one of the things that is like a presupposition that is like the foundation for many of the things that we go after in life, whether it's like a spiritual goal or a business goal, or we want to have impact on the world, we want to have service, we want to have a better relationship, or we want to like get out of a bad situation, or whatever it is, right? I mean, or health, healing, all of it. Could you go into a lucid dream and say, here's my goal, this is what I want, and this is how I'm thinking about it, this is how I'm going after it? Maybe it's even like, okay, meditation, like I want to achieve, immersion with the one. I want to have a samadhi experience. And this is how I'm going after it with, this is my practice, and I already know my practice, but I'm saying like, this is how I think about that as a goal, and this is what I'd like to experience. And, what do I need to do to get there? Or am I thinking about it in the right way? Am I conceiving of it in a way that is going to help me get there? Or does this make sense? Like, that's kind of like, in some ways, right, that could be an example of testing out your philosophical like belief system about something, and relative to what you want.
Well, remember, you're in your own subconscious, so it knows more than you know about what you think and what you act on and what you believe, right? I mean,
well, we don't think about that as that way, because again, like, okay, I'm in my dreams, I'm in my subconscious, I'm dreaming,
right?
And at this point, I'm still trying to make heads or tails of what's going on in there. So how could that be a representation of an aspect of me which, like you just said, knows more about my beliefs or my motivations than I do consciously? That's
right.
Hard. That's a hard pill to swallow.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, and that's why a lot of those things, when you ask questions like that, they can be shocking. The answers can be shocking to you, right?
When you ask those questions in your lucid dream.
Absolutely. Because out here you can fool yourself. You can say, "Oh no, I'm a good guy." It's like I work hard. It's like whatever, and maybe you don't. Maybe you're not. And so we all fool ourselves in different ways. I mean, the conscious mind is notorious for that, right? And really, really good at it, convincing ourselves of, our own biases and all of these things, right? That we think about ourselves. I mean, that's where the ego got all that bad rep. It's like, oh, it's the part that's sort of like hidden to you, but everybody else sees it. You think you're a good guy. I've known plenty of people that were SOBs, and they thought they were exceptional humans, And I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. I mean, there's no hypertrophy here, or hyperbole, right? It's literally like they were shocked. They thought they were stellar humans, and they treated their workers like shit. And everybody knew it, and everybody complained about it, but it was like, no, they never even conceived of that. So it was quite a blow to find out that everybody thought they were a dick, so it's like, we're masters at deceiving ourselves about one thing or another. So, so when you go into the subconscious, I mean, that's why asking the right questions or forming your questions in the right way is probably a better way to say that, so that it's more pointed and not so open-ended. Because, you could say, am I doing the right thing? And your subconscious in whatever guise, will say, no. But that's it. And you'd be like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, the word no means negative. It's like you're not. And so you have to piece together questions that are, going to be more direct and to the point, so you can get a somewhat a straight answer back, right, and know how to proceed from that point. Then what do I do now that's going to be the most efficient way to move me forward toward the goal that I've already established? And if you can ask questions in a poignant way, you'll get more information back. And here's the next step that will be the most efficient to moving you closer to this thing. Well, maybe it's something that you can't do. Maybe it means like going to Fiji and sitting on the beach for 3 months. For most of us, nice dream, not happening. Okay, so there's the most efficient way. Somehow in Fiji on the beach, you'll have a major breakthrough, right? And so that you're done. But okay, so what's the next? What's the step that, the most efficient step for me to move forward toward my dream in a good way that I can do right now? And so, they show you, and maybe something is hard, but you asked for the most efficient way to do it. So, is the sacrifice worth it? Am I willing to bet that maybe my subconscious knows more about me and how I will progress? And of course, I'm going to put it to the test, right? I would never just trust all of those things. That's sort of like rule number one. Take everything with a grain of salt. Know that it's mostly speaking in symbolism or showing you in symbols. And so, you have to look through that with that lens and come out and check out everything that it tells you to do. If you're going to go ahead and do it, you need to check it out and see, okay, I'm going to do step 1. How's that? Step 2, step 3, right? Or I'm going to try it for 7 days. Maybe you'll ask it, it's like, how long would I have to do this to get what's the end result going to be for this median step? And how long is it going to take me to reach that? If it says 10 years, you'd be like, okay, maybe it's not worth the sacrifice. Is there a better way to move me a little closer? But if it says, 90 days, well, then you have to decide, right? It's not a week. Anybody can do anything for a week. I mean, people could probably do anything for 30 days. But when you start putting multiple months together, it's like, okay, there's a sacrifice of a quarter year of your time to put everything else aside and do just this thing, in order to see if it will produce the result that you're looking for. If that's the case, good. If you think that that's a worthy sacrifice, a worthy exchange, if I sacrifice this time and energy and whatever toward this goal, and I do that, I will achieve that point, then go and do it, and you got to check it out. You have to sort of put your money where your mouth is.
Can you get answers with that level of clarity?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can. You got to get good at asking the questions. It's way harder than it sounds. That's like a whole territory of work. Asking proper questions is a big deal. So.
Well, we'll have to continue to talk about that.
Oh, that's We'll do that often.
Yeah, especially in the second part of the program, I think, because again, it's like at this stage.
We just need to get in consistently.
Yeah.
And don't worry about I think the person that you're referencing was talking about like the hedonism part and all of that stuff. And it's like, look, I've never met anybody that consistently got into lucid dreams that didn't have those aspects of just having fun in the beginning. I've not a single one.
But I do bring up the deeper understanding of how it can help and assist in other areas of our life, just because I think for some people that may not be motivating.
No, and I'm not even saying that you should go after that. I'm just saying it's a natural occurrence that happens. You're gonna want to fly. You're gonna want to run like the wind. You're gonna, whatever your idea of total freedom is, you're going to want to do that.
Fun, and pleasure, freedom.
Checking it out, just exploratory nature, right? It's like
can I go into outer space? Can I
all of that stuff? And it's like, don't suppress that stuff. I'm just saying, whatever will. I mean, imagine whatever that is, something that obviously maybe you can't do here. obviously, and then you go out and you're able to do that there. Well,
In a
imagine
place that's just as real.
right, and imagine how exciting that will be for you.
Right.
It would be as if you did it here, right? And so you're going to bring that excitement back. That's only going to fuel you're getting out more consistently, right? Because now you have a target. Like, I've actually been there. I know that I can get there and I can get back there again. So fueling it with those exciting adventures is not, it's not a lost cause, right? It's not like, I mean, I get stoicism. I get, thinking that the problems that you have that you want lucid dreaming to address are more important than, having some fun. Granted, they are,
or
but
the
you need to
noble goals or whatever.
They're very noble, whatever it is. It's just that you need some fuel, meaning emotion, to consistently propel you into getting sustainable lucid dream experiences, right? You've got to be able to, get there a certain number of times in order to make it practical. And then you got to be able to stabilize, then you got to be able to mobile around in all kinds of ways. Then you got to be able to change the,
Right.
all of those things that we stepped out.
understand what
But
you're saying.
you need to get in the front door a number of times.
Right.
And having even a small experience of that and then compounding it with like, okay, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I'm going to fly as fast as I can, or I'm going to go see if I can see the pyramids, or I'm going to, swim with the whales, whatever, right? I mean, whatever your experience is that you just feel like that would just be the most exciting thing that would be phenomenal for you. Go and do that. Don't feel restricted like, oh, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
I've got to do this hard work. That's really important. And
So if I can, I just want to so what you're saying is like so what you're saying is like when like that the bringing the lucid dreaming to the level of proficiency that will allow you to really facilitate these other areas of your life, like in a pointed way. Like, obviously it's going to have a broad positive effect, but I mean like really specific help and assistance and momentum and toward whatever
Right.
your goal is. Like you're saying that like the fun, the excitement, the pleasure seeking, the just the adventure aspect of lucid dreaming, just the appreciation of how amazing it is fuel that allows you to continue to do the work to bring it to that level, because it's because you can't just expect yourself to get in and do that right away.
Yeah, nobody. I mean, think about the superstars that we know of in every area. But I always, it's so funny because I mean, I think it's one of the best ways to think about this is like professional sport or sports in general as a whole, right? And I'm not a big sports guy, so it's like but I see the lesson in this so clearly, and so many people are sports related that they can at least get the idea, right? So it's like the kids that we hold in high esteem and that seem to do the best in that professional level, at that superstar level, are the ones that still have their childlike attitude toward the game, right? They love the game. Yeah, they're making big bucks and they're, fame and glory and all of that stuff, but they love playing the game. They never lost that from the time that they were little, right? That's what's got them to want to spend more time doing it. It's like, and they were, why? Because they were having fun. And it's like Kevin Hart says, right? It's like kids don't know when to turn off fun. Once they start, it's like it's fun on and then collapse, right? And then they wake up, fun on, and collapse. And so, it's the same thing with this. What gives you the impetus to put extra hours in? What gives some of these kids the impetus to, go to a batting cage, 50 hours a week or whatever, when most people, it's just like they go to the Little League games and that's all it is, right? The same thing with any of those, people that transition to professional sports. I mean, there is some that's like just inherent physicality and that you can do those things, although we've seen anomalies that are outside of that. But it's the desire, and in the beginning, they're fueled by the fun of it. It's not just the winning. They love playing the game.
What do you think is the oh God, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's kind of, what do you think is the source of seriousness that undermines a game like childlike attitude? Because I find that's not easy to muster up.
Right. So I would say that it's like getting too serious too quickly. There's plenty of time to, do
But I
these.
mean, like, even with not just like around lucid dreaming, but I mean, like, kind of in general.
I think it's that, I think it puts too much pressure on you to be, you know,
How do you alleviate?
better in the beginning than you should be. That you're holding yourself to a high standard, but you're actually judging yourself against the ideal, right? The ideal is a judge, and that's, it's like, oh, I've got to be able to do this and this and this. It's like, dude, I've been doing this since I was a little kid. It's like, that's, quite a bit of time, more than you've been alive. So why would you think, I mean, it's always potential that somebody's a prodigy, but it's like, it's just been lots and lots of work and lots of, hundreds and thousands of hours of doing it. It's like you don't have enough time in yet, but you shouldn't be, it's not to say, oh, I want to be like this or better than this. I'm hoping everybody is better than me at this. That's my real goal. I want everybody to be better than me at this. But it's like, but it takes some time, right?
It's
it
like,
does take some time.
Yesterday when we were talking, you were saying that you were making the analogy of like trying to paint like me or whatever. You were like, oh, it's going to come out like not great, but if I have the expectation that it should, or that I could just do it next time without 10 years or 20 years of practice or whatever, then it's like you're kind of screwing yourself in the head by having expectations that are not in alignment with like just the structure of reality, basically, with like the fact that it takes time and practice to do anything or get good at anything.
Right. At least to the level that you're looking at. I mean, I could do the same thing, right? I could look at one of my grandkids, finger paintings that they brought home from kindergarten. I could probably make that. Given if I had the finger paints or whatever, my expectations are like, oh, I could probably do that. I might even be able to do it a little bit better, maybe, but at least I could copy that, right? But it's like, what's my expectation? I can use your paintings or somebody like that's paintings as an ideal, like, wow, I wonder what it would be like to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Let me try it. Oh my God, looks like a bloody nightmare, right? And then at the same time, it's like, but if I really have that drive, I really have that desire, it's like, okay, you're too good and don't have enough time to bring me through my paces from a beginner standpoint, but I can go online and find a course that will show me the 101 painting, right, and run me through the through the rigors of what that is, and you just keep increasing it and until your desire runs out, right? Is that desire to make something on canvas that really depicts what you see, and something maybe even more transcendent than that, right? Is that enough to pull you through the years of training that it would probably take the average person to go through to be able to actually produce something like that? I mean, for me, that I wouldn't think that I would have. I mean, even though I love artwork and all of that, I don't think that I would have, the wherewithal to say, okay, I'm going to have to sacrifice these other things to do that, because that's what it means, right? It's like you're sacrificing time in other territories to put more commitment and more time on that, because you think there's some value there that your heart just won't let you go without. Right? It's like, it's just this driving force. Every time, you try to drop it, it's like it just keeps gnawing at you. It's like, you've got to get back there. You've got to do that. You've got to get this really under your belt. You really need to be able to get in there and do something, because there's something great waiting for you on the other side of that.
So you think that like a childlike, or game-like attitude comes from the wisdom of experience, in a way of knowing that, like, to develop things to a very proficient level, which is what we want to do here, or at least offer that whole process for anybody that wants to go there,
right?
That it's like, if okay, like, it takes time, the benefits are amazing, but it's going to take a little practice. It's going to
Take
take a
some
little work.
practice,
And so
right.
I think that in light of that, again, like knowing that it's not different than other things in that way, and that nobody can, well, let's say very few people can get around the reality of practice and time and all that, then you can say like, okay, well then let's have a little more fun with it. Let's try to enjoy myself along the way, because it's like, if I'm going to be putting in the time
Right.
to enhance myself, my life, my mind, my inner world, my outer world by these means, I might as well try to enjoy myself along the way too, and not like, have not always just compare myself to the expectations that I have about the ideal of where I want to take it to,
Right.
because that will just bleed off the energy.
That's it. It's like it's like I go into everything expecting, first of all, I'm expecting to get a result. I really am. I mean, I'm anticipating getting a result. I'm not afraid to do that, even if it falls short of my expectation, right? It's like I'm anticipating getting something is going to happen. I'm convinced of it every time I go in. And I have, even when it doesn't, I go into the next day convinced that something's going to happen. So, and there's that little element of like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I want this, but I'm not quite sure what's going to happen between point A and point B, right? Or what happens if I go past that point, or, go off to the side? What will happen? So there's that bit of curiosity, that uncertainty that drives me in a certain way and makes it more fun, right? It's like, can I do this? Can I relax my body to this stage of relaxation? And it's like, and can I hold it there without falling asleep? What's that going to be like? There's that sort of fun curiosity in it. Like a kid. I mean, I go back to this all the time because it's just, they're just so great at being, using a term that's overused, being in the moment. It's like nothing else exists. I just remember every single one of my children, or someplace where there's a curb and they're like balancing on the curb. They want to balance on everything, right? So it's like they're balancing on the curb, and and I'm like, oh, be careful, there's crocodiles on the on the pavement side, and there's hot lava on the grass side. It's like, and they're like, oh, and then you can tell they're like, they start to wobble a little bit. It's like, oh, it's like it becomes this whole virtual reality for them, right? They're really in it, but they're excited as well, right? They can imagine those terrors on both sides, and so it puts some extra pressure on them, but they're having fun doing it. Like, can I get a little farther? Can I get a little farther? Can I get a little farther? Oop, I'm losing my balance. Which way do I want to? It's like all of those things. And at the same time, they also have this part in the back of their head where they know, no matter how well they've imagined it, that, first of all, I'm there, and second of all, that there aren't any alligators in the parking lot, and it's not hot lava, but grass on the left side. But they can, in their mind, they can put themselves in such a state that they get really hyped up and excited about that. It's sort of like that, like, something's going to happen. You're anticipating that something's going to happen. You're convinced something's going to happen, but you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. And so there's that element of excitement. Now, how do you tamp that down? How do you bring it up? And how do you tamp it down enough to be able to relax and go to sleep, right? It's like, that's that balance again. So even in that, we're trying to discover, our own ways of sort of moving into that place and finding that balance for ourselves. There'll be some people that they're so groggy, even if they stay up for 20 minutes, they're going to be like falling asleep within that 20 minutes and doing the head bob, right? So it's like, and it's going to be hard enough for them to get through the whole relaxation before they fall asleep. So they're going to need a little bit of something to boost them up, make them a little bit more awake. It might be doing some sit-ups or push-ups or something to get their blood going a little bit. It might be, as I've used in the past, a little bit of caffeine or something like that in order to sort of keep you, on task, but not enough to stimulate you so you can't go back to sleep, right? So everybody's a little bit different. It's just know the principle, right? It's like you want to go after it with that, joyful effort, right? It's that childlike effort that, something's going to happen. It's like you're being observant to see what it is, what thing that's unusual that's going to come out of that. I think when we do that and sort of, have that attitude going in there, it makes it less judgmental when we don't hit it, right? Because something happened, and I'm already building on my success that, I did this and something happened. Oh, damn, I fell asleep. Well, something happened. It's like, okay, what am I going to do about it next time? Oh, now I've been awake for 3 hours. I can't get in there. It's like, oh, something happened. Okay. Well, that was pretty funny.
Novel.
It sucked, but it was okay. It's like, it's not going to crush the world. Okay. So,
Gotcha.
but that's sort of that attitude, right? It's like, wow, okay, well, that wasn't what I expected, or, wow, that really sucked. I didn't like tossing and turning like that, no matter what I would do. So I get up and change it around, but not like,
suck at this, so hard.
Yeah, it's not like, somebody's coming in to beat you the next day because,
right,
you didn't do it,
Thank
right?
God.
Well, yeah, you could have some black and blue marks by now.
Right.
But that's the idea, and it's like, again, finding novel ways to keep the excitement, mix it up, but not frenetically.
Right.
There's that balance again.
Yeah.
You don't want to do something so short-lived that you're not getting any legs out of it, right? You're not seeing any response from it. So, but you don't want to beat a dead dog either, right? So
the other thing, I just wanted to make sure that we finished the thought on seeing energy, because you started to talk about how that requires a considerable amount of time here, and that it would be good primarily for health care practitioners or people in the healing industry. But you said a lot of things about it, but basically I think you wanted to make the point that within a lucid dream, it's one of those things that specifically facilitates.
Oh yeah. I mean, again, it's like, especially the finer nuances, but even the gross, practice of being able to do that. I mean, that's something that you can practice over and over again there, and bring it back to
easier.
It's a heck of a lot easier, and you get comfortable with it. You open up those pathways. I mean, again,
you get comfortable with it.
Yeah, you get comfortable with checking it out. Because it's not like in a lucid dream where you can't, if you lose it, you can't reinitiate it, right?
You mean that happens sometimes here when we're learning it, like we get it and then we can't get it back,
right?
But
or it's just always, for the certain amount of time that you're doing it, maybe you're just getting the outline and nothing else, and it's not progressing past that point, and you start getting frustrated with yourself, and it's like, am I doing something wrong, or am I not doing something more that I need to do, or am I doing too? It's like all these parameters come up, and you're like, oh, okay,
right.
That's when you need somebody to sort of, analyze it and poke you back into place and say, oh, no, you're fine. You just need more time to sort of flesh that out. In a lucid dream, it's, that's much easier to sort of go through on a regular basis and establish that practice much easier. Again, 10 times the amount of result from doing it there, compared to doing it out here, where you have all these other distractions going on and all of that. I mean, obviously a lucid dream has some distractions too, or potential distractions, but the effect that you glean from doing it there, and sort of a perfect laboratory to work on that, you're going to get a lot farther, and one of the connections will be made.
And one of the things that I wanted to bring up too is, like, when you were talking about like just adventure and fun and all that kind of stuff, you still do that too.
Oh yeah.
Even though like you're like at the level where like you're doing it to help do energy work for other people, you're doing it to promote your own practice, you're doing it to burn off, do burning meditation when you're in the lucid dream to purge things you don't want or whatever, but you still make time to just do,
of course,
fun things too. Like,
of course, you need that, you need that ability to just free explore, right? And I mean, you can't just press kids to service, or anybody to service without any kind of break
or yourself,
or whatever. Oh, especially yourself. People do it all the time, right? I mean, most of my students are much harder on themselves than I am.
You say that a lot.
They are. They want to live up to, or whatever it is, and it's like, really, I mean, as long as you're progressing, for yourself, I mean, you know, I, it's not about me,
But
it's about you guys getting what you need, you feel you need, or if you feel you want, and the ability for me to articulate it in a way that will make your learning curve shorter.
so even though we want to meet our own ideals, we need to figure out how to have fun along the way and enjoy ourselves, and celebrate the all the small victories that we get along the way by making it something that's enjoyable as much as it is about the the mission that we're on, or the whatever whatever form that takes for each person, even if it's just getting healthier.
I mean, it should be there should be the balance that is comfortable for each person. We're all fingerprints, so the work ethic and all of that, and really, I think that in a lucid dream, I mean, in that scenario, even work, if you want to think of it that way, can be entertaining and exciting and all of those things, right? Because it's like you're in a sacred drama all the time. You're interacting. It's not just, you're not viewing it on a screen someplace, or sort of going through the motions, or watching somebody on stage give you a rah speech that builds you up. And there's places for all of those things, but you're actually in it and working through it when you're in a lucid dream. And again, that's invaluable, right? It's like you just, there's no way to compare that to anything out here, other than hiring a troupe of actors to sort of,
That'd be crazy.
Run you through your paces, 100 times a day, every day,
assembling a team of people that know you better than you know yourself, and
right,
then telling them what they need to do to. That's crazy.
And then let them, let them find all these weird scenarios to put you through your paces. That would be insane,
Right.
But in a lucid dream, you can do that, and so, and it's all you. So, it's really it's a profound experience, and you can break through a lot of your own crap, which is one of the biggest things that it's good for, right? It's before you're being of service to everybody else, you need to be of service to yourself, right? You need to break through your stuff, see what the real cause is for you being held back, if you feel that you are in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's like finding out those reasons and knowing what to do to rectify that. That's very empowering for people, and being able to go through the scenario over and over again until you really have it down, and then applying that to your waking reality, that's huge. It's like, again, you might get done in a year what would take 10 or 20 years in therapy to do. So it's really, I can't think of a better tool to utilize to be able to do stuff like that. At least I haven't come across it yet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We will wrap it up, and I definitely feel like I've gotten a little bit of a boost that I need, and I'm going to try to have a little more fun with it, and apply those things that we talked about. So
yeah,
thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
All right. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys soon.
See you guys.